Noir. Used with a wide brush and reckless abandon, the word seems to mean just about anything these days. Though having its roots in the crime and detective films of the 30s up through the 50s, literally meaning dark, the word has come to encompass the genre as a whole. Literary works, comics, video games, everything. You can't seem to go a full rotation around the domain of Apollo without some artsy schmuck throwing the word noir or neo-noir into a project description to con folks out of their hard-earned greenbacks. However, we know exactly what they mean when they say it. Dark alleys, dank offices, sordid affairs, double crosses, beautiful dames with dark eyes and even blacker souls, and one poor bastard caught in the middle of all of it. It's a genre distinction that immediately paints its setting in the same way that the term Western paints its time and place. The term used by the pulp slingers and novelists of the day, I feel, is just as effective. The hard-boiled. Light up and pour yourselves a glass of something strong, lads, because we cast our eyes, private and otherwise, onto a landmark work of the genre, and the first appearance of a towering symbol of the American private eye, Philip Marlowe. Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep. Chandler, an American who lived most of his life as a naturalized British subject, started writing much later in life, with today's novel, his first full length, being published when he was 51 in 1939. His writing debut started 6 years earlier after a tumultuous life marked by his time in the French trenches of World War I, layered by habits of promiscuity, alcoholism, and flighty absenteeism, and topped by his time in the oil business going bust with the coming of the Great Depression. His first tales, published in legendary crime and detective pulp Black Mask, followed in a tradition cut by Perry Mason sire Earl Stanley Gardner and the dean of the school of the hard-boiled Dashiell Hammett, creator of the genre's other gumshoe symbol, Sam Spade. Chandler's early stories star detectives that, though under different names, including Carmody, John Dalmas, John Evans, and Mallory, are all considered by fans and Chandler scholars to be effectively the same man, who wasn't given a proper name until our novel today, dubbed forever and always Philip Marlowe. After The Big Sleep, Chandler published 6 more novels, with his last Marlowe story still in his typewriter at the time of his death in 1959. Said novel was finally finished 30 years later for what would have been Chandler's 100th birthday by author Robert B. Parker, his own detective character, Spencer, being cut from Marlowe's cloth. So what's the case? Marlowe shows up at the doors of an aging military man turned oil tycoon, General Sternwood, with the general hoping Marlowe can look into some dirty business that may be lying behind letters that have been showing up at the house. I opened it up and took out a brown card and 3 slips of stiff paper. The card was thin brown linen, printed in gold. Mr. Arthur Gwynne Geiger. No address. Very small in the lower left-hand corner, rare books and deluxe editions. I turned the card over, most of the slanted printing on the back. Dear Sir, in spite of the legal uncollectability of the enclosed, which frankly represents gambling debts, I assume you might wish them honored. Respectfully, A. G. Geiger. I looked at the slips of the stiffish white paper. They were promissory notes filled out in ink, dated on several dates early in the month before September. On demand, I promised to pay to Arthur Gwynne Geiger or order the sum of $1,000 without interest. Value received. Carmen Sternwood. The written part was in a sprawling, moronic handwriting with a lot of fat curlicues and circles for dots. I mixed myself another drink and sipped it, put the exhibit aside. Your conclusions? I haven't any yet. The blackmail scheme is aimed squarely at Sternwood's daughter, Carmen, a ditzy, infantile party girl prone to fits of rage and mood swings. Though the general has largely written his daughter off and is willing to pay to make it go away, he seems to have an underlying concern with the affair. His elder daughter, Vivian, was married to an ex-bootlegger, one Rusty Regan, who disappeared about a month back without a word. And although Marlowe isn't explicitly hired to find Regan, only to investigate the blackmail, everyone seems to have some sort of suspicion that his disappearance may have something to do with it. The trail will lead Marlowe through a twisting trail of double crosses, murders, spurned lovers, gangsters, and rackets, all wrapped in a mystery so crazy that not even Chandler himself could keep track of it all. Chandler used a process he dubbed cannibalizing, which meant he took from his older short stories, merging disparate but similar pieces to create the novel's plot. He would then beef up descriptions, change character names, and collapse various roles into a single all-encompassing one to smooth over the cracks. The problem with this method is that the scheme and disparate elements are so multifarious and winding that when confusion arose regarding one of the murders when the novel was later being adapted to the screen by Howard Hawks, Chandler could only shrug and say he had no idea who the culprit was. It makes for a story that exists somewhat in two parts: the blackmail case that Marlowe was brought in for, and the final nagging questions that seem to hang over it when the whole thing is seemingly wrapped up. What triumphs in Chandler's writing is that the atmosphere, characters, and dialogue are so good that you hardly notice the rough edges of the plot while the story is being told. The Sternwoods are broken in different ways. The General is physically hampered, with his age and sickness keeping him wheelchair-bound, enjoying by proxy the drinking and smoking of others. A hard man whose sheer force of will has kept him alive this long, with that same hardness more than likely making his children as wayward as they are. Vivian plays the opposite number to Carmen, a mature woman who's prone to sleeping around, stiff drinks, and gambling. She's a poison that may go down smoother for some than her sister, but she's poison nonetheless. She had a drink. She took a swallow from it and gave me a cool, level stare over the rim of the glass. So you're the private detective. I didn't know they really existed except in books. Or else they were greasy little men snooping around hotels. There was nothing in that for me, so I let it drift with the current. Opposite the Sternwoods stands Eddie Mars, a rich socialite and gangster whose wife was rumored to have run off with Rusty Regan and holds Vivian by the way of her gambling vice, running shady casinos on the sly. The blackmail case brings him on a collision course with Marlowe as he's wrapped up in the racket that the blackmailers are running. And just who the hell are you, soldier? Marlowe's the name. I'm a sleuth. Never heard of you. Who's the girl? Client. Geiger was trying to throw a loop on her with some blackmail. We came to talk it over. He wasn't here, the door being open, we walked in to wait, or did I tell you that? Convenient. The door being open, when you didn't have a key. Yes? How come you had a key? Is that any of your business, soldier? I could make it my business, and I could make your business my business. You wouldn't like it. Pay's too small. All right, Bright Eyes, I own this house. Geiger is my tenant. Now what do you think of that? You know such lovely people. What's interesting is how much of a presence characters who are hardly there have in the story. Arthur Geiger, the blackmailer in question, never has a line of dialogue. His racket, an illegal pornography outfit, is the center of the blackmail scheme, with Carmen having nude photos taken of her, and those being held as leverage. His list of customers are also on the chopping block. However, his biggest moment is his murder, which spurs the rest of the plot into motion. He was on his back on the floor, behind the fringe of a Chinese rug, in front of a thing that looked like a totem pole. It had a profile like an eagle. Wide, round eye was a camera lens. The lens was aimed at the naked girl in the chair. There was a blackened flashbulb clipped to the side of the totem pole. Geiger was wearing Chinese slippers with thick felt soles. His legs were in black satin pajamas, and the upper part of him wore a Chinese embroidered coat, the front of which was mostly blood. His glass eyes shone brightly up at me, and was by far the most lifelike thing about him. At a glance, none of the 3 shots I heard had missed. He was very dead. Rusty Regan and Mars' wife have a similar position, not being present for a majority of the book, but always being mentioned and wondered about, their locations unclear and gnawing at each of our characters at every turn. They're the mile-high question mark over the story, and loom large despite their absence. And caught in the crossfire of it all is our Shamus. Marlowe, as Chandler put it, should always be in a lonely street, in lonely rooms, puzzled but never defeated. Chandler was also very specific on the difference between his detective in the homegrown American mold from the sleuths of Europe, the Poirots and Holmes of the world. As a matter of fact, Marlowe himself explains the difference. Your man Norris seemed to think that when Geiger was eliminated, the case was over. I don't see it that way. Geiger's method of approach puzzled me and still does. I'm not Sherlock Holmes or Philo Vance. I don't expect to go over ground the police have covered and pick up a broken pen point and build a case from it. If you think there's anybody in the detective business making a living doing that sort of thing, you don't know much about cops. It's not things like that they overlook, if they overlook anything. I'm not saying they often overlook anything when they're really allowed to work, but if they do, it's apt to be something looser and vaguer, like a man of Geiger's type sending you his evidence of debt and asking you to pay like a gentleman. Geiger, a man in a shady racket, in a vulnerable position, protected by a racketeer, and having at least some negative protection from some of the police. Why did he do that? I think what makes a character like Marlowe and his hard-boiled brethren so appealing is that they're largely average Joes who just refuse to say die. Our boy Phil takes beating after beating, loss after loss, and still manages to come out with his head on straight. Puzzled but never defeated is a position that a lot of people find themselves in far more than effortlessly deducing and solving a problem. What keeps Marlowe alive is his quick thinking, near constant observation of the world around him, and his experience with people. Marlowe doesn't usually resort to violent means to solve a problem. The point is made on several occasions that he rarely carries a sidearm despite owning one and the danger involved with his work. Behind a weighted flap directly under my right leg as I sat in the car, there was a hidden compartment. There were 2 guns in it. One belonged to Eddie Mars's boy Lanny, and one belonged to me. I took Lanny's. It would have more practice than mine. Where a less talented, hard man would burst into a location and beat the information out of people, Marlowe gets information the old-fashioned way, walking through the front door with a plan. You know Geiger's store across the street, 2 blocks west? I think I may have passed it. It's a bookstore. Not your kind of bookstore, you know darn well. You know anything about rare books? You could try me. Would you have a Ben-Hur 1860 3rd edition, the one with the duplicated line on page 116? Nobody would. There isn't one. Right. What in the world are you driving at? The girl in Geiger's store didn't seem to know that. I see. You interest me rather vaguely. I'm a private dick on a case. Perhaps I asked too much. It didn't seem much to me somehow. Now, those plans don't always work, but Chandler imbues Marlowe with enough hesitation and wisdom to keep him from getting his head blown clean off. The biggest thing, I feel, that sets Marlowe apart from a lot of what we think of in the noir genre, especially in modern times, is his sense of morality. The black and white world that we often think of in the genre is mostly painted in gray. The question is more often how someone will compromise instead of if they will. Marlowe, despite everything around him actively encouraging him to take the easy way out, manages to stick to what's important, the case he's hired for, and his personal obligation to it. Marlowe is continually asked about Rusty Regan and his disappearance, only to tell them that he's not hired to look into it. When Vivian attempts to put the moves on him, he brings about one of the most memorable exchanges of the book. "Hold me close, you beast." I put my arms around her loosely at first. Her hair had a harsh feeling against my face. I tightened my arms and lifted her up. I brought her face slowly up to my face. Her eyelids were flickering rapidly like moth wings. I kissed her tightly and quickly, then a long, slow, clinging kiss. Her lips opened under mine. Her body began to shake in my arms. "Kill her," she said softly. Her breath was going into my mouth. I strained her against me until the shivering of her body was almost shaking mine. I kept on kissing her. After a long time, she pulled her head away enough to say, "Where do you live?" "Hobart Arms. Franklin, near Kenmore." "I've never seen it." "Want to?" "Yes." "What has Eddie Mars got on you?" Her body stiffened in my arms, and her breath made a harsh sound. Her head pulled back until her eyes, wide open, ringed with white, were staring at me. "So that's the way it is," she said in a soft, dull voice. "That's the way it is. Kissing is nice, but your father didn't hire me to sleep with you." "You son of a bitch," she said calmly, without moving. I laughed in her face. "I don't think I'm an icicle. I'm not blind or without senses. I have warm blood like the next guy. You're easy to take, too damn easy. What has Eddie Mars got on you?" "If you say that again, I'll scream." "Go ahead. Scream." She jerked away and pulled herself upright, far back into the corner of the car. "Men have been shot for little things like that, Marlowe." "Men have been shot for practically nothing. The first time we met, I told you I was a detective. Get it through your lovely head. I work at it, lady. I don't play at it." Behind that duty and obligation is something Chandler said. Marlowe is, to use a rather weathered phrase, a man of honor. He is first and foremost a good man. The easy way that's presented to him is often not just a way out, but the wrong way to handle things. When Marlowe is offered a large payout to leave a piece of the case alone by Vivian and is insulted when he won't take it, he delivers a perfect summation of his outlook.
You son of a bitch.
Uh-huh, I'm a very smart guy. I haven't a feeling or a scruple in the world. All I have the itch for is money. I'm so money greedy that for $25 a day in expenses, mostly gasoline and whiskey, I do my thinking myself, what there is of it. I risk my whole future, the hatred of cops and of Eddie Mars and his pals. I dodge bullets and eat saps and say thank you very much. If you have any more trouble, I hope you'll think of me. I'll just leave one of my cards in case anything comes up. I do all this for $25 a day, and maybe just a little to protect what little pride a broken and sick old man has left in his blood, in the thought that his blood is not poison, and that although his 2 little girls are a trifle wild, as many nice girls are these days, they're not perverts or killers, and that makes me a son of a bitch. Alright, I don't care anything about it. I've been called that by people of all shapes and sizes, including your little sister. She called me worse than that for not getting into bed with her. I've got $500 from your father, which I didn't ask for, but he can afford to give it to me. I can get another $1,000 for finding Mr. Rusty Regan if I could find him. Now you offer me 15 grand, and that makes me a big shot. With 15 grand, I could own a home, and a new car, and 4 suits of clothes. I might even take a vacation without worrying about losing a case. That's fine. What are you offering it to me for? Can I go on being a son of a bitch, or do I have to become a gentleman, like that lush that passed out in this car the other night? The opening of the book gives us a taste of the same. The main hallway of the Sternwood place was 2 stories high. Over the entrance doors, which would have set in a troop of Indian elephants, there was a broad stained glass panel showing a knight in dark armor rescuing a lady who was tied to a tree and didn't have any clothes on but some very long and convenient hair. The knight had pushed the visor of his helmet back to be sociable, and he was fiddling with the knots on the rope that tied the lady to the tree, and not getting anywhere. I stood there, and thought if I lived in the house, I would sooner or later have to climb up there and help him. He didn't seem to be really trying. Marlowe is not a perfect man. Prone to drink, cynicism, and depression, living in the office he works out of, one would be hard-pressed to find things to envy about Marlowe's life. But despite that, he stands as a modern knight in the way that we all wish them to be. Brave, courageous, and honorable. In the end, Marlowe leaves behind a bribe that could set him up for success, the arms of a beautiful heiress, and a way out of this life of bloodshed and back alleys to go back to his shabby little office, because it's the right thing to do. Chandler's essay, The Simple Art of Murder, lays out precisely how he sees his heroes and the kind of men they are. Though oft-quoted and perhaps a cliché to do so, it paints too good of a picture to omit. But down these mean streets a man must go who is not himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid. The detective in this kind of story must be such a man. He is the hero. He is everything. He must be a complete man, a common man, yet an unusual man. He must be, to use a rather weathered phrase, a man of honor, by instinct, by inevitability, without thought of it, and certainly without saying it. He must be the best man in his world, and a good enough man for any world. I do not care much about his private life. He is neither a eunuch nor a satyr. I think he might seduce a duchess, and I am quite sure he would not spoil a virgin. If he is a man of honor in one thing, he is that in all things. He is a relatively poor man, or he would not be a detective at all. He is a common man, or he could not go among common people. He has a sense of character, or else he would not know his job. He will take no man's money dishonestly, no man's insolence without a due and dispassionate revenge. He is a lonely man, and his pride is that you will treat him as a proud man, or be very sorry you ever saw him. He talks as a man of his age talks, that is, with rude wit, a lively sense of the grotesque, and a disgust for sham, and a contempt for pettiness. The story is his adventure in a search of a hidden truth, and it would be no adventure if it did not happen to a man fit for adventure. He has a range of awareness that startles you, but it belongs to him by right, because it belongs to the world he lives in. The world out there is a dark and scary place. It'll bend and twist to serve its own purpose, and many will do the same to stay alive. We see a lot of our fiction go this way. James Bond, Mac Bolan, Arsène Lupin, Conan are all men that we've looked at that play by their own rules, according to what will best suit their goals. We applaud authors who write compromised men. We see their flaws, see our own inadequacies in them, and say how realistic gray morality is. Marlowe is something that seems to grow rarer by the day in our fiction. A man with flaws whose morals won't be hampered by them. If there are enough like him, I think the world will be a very safe place to live in, and yet not too dull to be worth living in. Go and do likewise. This book was a great time and deserves its classic status. Copies are easy to come by due to the book's age, and Marlowe's adventures have made the jump to radio, television, and film, so check those out too. Particular recommendations on that front to Powers Booth, and his turn as Marlowe in the HBO series if you can find it. Next time, a return to the hallowed halls of sword and sorcery, where we enter the palace of the Emperor of Melnibone, Elric. In the meantime, show him some guts.